Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of 30 Minutes of Growth. I am here today with a good friend of mine, former colleague, Dr. Kristen Rodville. Had an opportunity to experience her go through her doctoral journey, her career progression journey. And so, Dr. Rodville, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for the invite, Dr. Campbell. This is such a pleasure. It is.
So, what are we going to talk about today?
We are talking about, which when I looked at your list of topics, I was like, no, no, no. And when I landed on this one, I was like, yes, no one selected it. And it's cultivating self-confidence and overcoming self-doubt. And that had my name all over it. Yes.
Well, you know what? I guess I never knew that. When we worked together at a university and you were the dean, I saw you were the national dean. I saw you as this powerhouse professional who had it together, a mom, a wife, right? So I think a lot of times we portray this persona that we have it all together, when in
Right.
actuality, we are falling apart. And when I released my new book, Grow With Me, one of the things that I talk about in the book is executing faith over fear. I allowed myself to be held hostage by salary and benefits and stayed in a situation when I should have been gone years ago. But I personally made up my mind this year that I was going to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And let me tell you, once you start to release some things in that uncomfortable phase, that's where the real growth begins.
It is. It really is. My growth began long before I met you, though.
Well, tell us
Long,
about that.
long before I met you. I was the perfectionist young lady growing up in a very rural area. Always had to be on the honor roll, always had to portray perfection all the time. Um, But I dealt with some issues as a young person. I was very overweight. So I was for lack of better words, I was the fat, funny kid that made the honor roll. Came from a very dysfunctional household, which eventually it came back together again, but there were some big bumps in the road. Never ever sought any help for that, just kept on going. As long as I made the honor roll, and if I would lose 5 pounds, everything would be good. And so my mother worked at the high school where I attended. I wouldn't recommend that. However, she worked in the counselor's office. So I was a senior, and, I had dreams of by that time, I was going for an associate's degree, and that was my goal, was an associate's degree at a community college, and that was going to be it for me because that's all I thought I could do. So I took, back then, you had to take the ACT and not the SAT. So I went on and I studied for months for this ACT because I knew I was going to get a scholarship to this community college for this associate degree in health information technology. Back then it was medical records, right? So I did the ACT, got up, and I was pumped. I was going to do it. Well, my mother worked in the counselor's office. So she was the one that got the scores back. She called me out of class for me to come to her office, and she was I don't mean just, but she was a secretary for the counselors at the school. She called me out of class for me to come so I could see my ACT scores. She said, "This is embarrassing." I said, "What?" She said, "Your scores are so low. You have to do this again. This is embarrassing. I said, oh my, okay, okay. So did it again. Only brought up my score. SAT is so different. It scores so different than ACT, but I brought up my scores 2 points. That was the best I could do. So I go into this community college pursuing this ART credential back then. And I was admitted provisionally because of my ACT scores to a community college. I thought, you can't stop me. So I made a 3.8 GPA for 3 semesters. And I thought, you know what? I think I'm a little better, just a little better than an associate's degree. So I think I want a bachelor's. And so I talked to my mother about that. And she said, why? And I said, because I'm too young to graduate from college and start paying taxes. Let me go further in debt because I was paying for my school. Let me go further in debt and get this bachelor's degree because my grandmother was an ART and I wanted to continue her lineage. So that's what I did. So I met my match in my bachelor's degree. I thought, wow, this is a lot different. Um, but made honor society because I've always been an overachiever with the books. It's those standardized tests that kick me in the mouth all the time. And I know that about me. I know that about me. So um, ended up graduating. But before I could graduate, I had to present to one of my, it was a 400 level class. It was an HIM class. I begged and pleaded, please don't make me talk in front of people. Don't make me do this. I cannot do this. I begged that teacher to the point of tears. Please don't make me do this because I will fail this assignment and I'm not a failure. And it would just go on and on and on. And she was like, you can't graduate until you do this. So I sucked it up and I did it. I ended up getting a very low B on that assignment, which was devastating to me. I was one of those that not 100%, but golly, not a low B. That's not acceptable. But anyway, I got through it and I swore to myself I would never speak in front of a group again. Like, this is it. I am not a speaker. I cannot do this. So now we roll around to the RHIA, which at that time it was the RRA years ago. That exam was October 15th of 1994. I'll never forget that day as long as I'm breathing, ever, because I had to travel from Chapel Hill to Winston-Salem to take that exam because I had since graduated from Kentucky and moved to Chapel Hill with one contingency, that I passed that exam or I would lose my job as a medical records director. And I thought the pressure is on. So I started studying for the RRA exam in July of 1994, and I took it in October. And I thought, how do I study? And I had to really, really kind of dig deep. Like, you can't fail this. You can't fail this. This is your whole life. It's your entire life. So I started making note cards and I had gotten a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment and I had wallpaper of note cards. My entire apartment was covered in note cards. So I took that exam and I had to wait till December of 1994 to see if I could keep my job and if I passed it. And fortunately, I did. And so I thought, I have proven myself. I can do this and I'm done. And so I wiped my hands clean. I'm finished. I'm not doing anything else but sailing off into the sunset as an HIM director. I'm finished. And so, like I said, I was in Chapel Hill. My boss came to me and said, what are you doing with yourself? I'm like, I'm your medical records director. What do you mean? And she said, you need to get your master's. I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm not master's material. No. She said, yes, you are. And I think you should go for it because we are literally within walking distance of UNC, Chapel Hill. I was like, oh, geez, I don't even know how to do this. I don't know how to go about it. And so she worked with me. So I went to take the GRE to get into grad school. And I met with the dean of public health. And he said, you have a bachelor's? I said, yes. Yes, sir, I do. And I also have credentials. I'm an RRA. He said, this GRE score, no, we can't let you in. I'm like, what? He said, this is really low. And I said, oh my God, here we go again. So I had to take the GRE again to even get into grad school. So the day that I took it on North Carolina Central's campus. There was no heat in the buildings. It was frigid. And of course, you can't wear jackets, right? It's like the RHIA exam nowadays. So I froze through the test. My score, I barely slid in to grad school. I finished grad school with like a 3.6 and working full time. I'm like, okay. So when I started grad school, I was like, okay, I'm just doing a 2 year and then I'm done. I'm done. And I can prove to everybody that I can get a master's from my wonderful, beloved UNC because I've always been a UNC fan. And that was the only reason I was doing it, actually. And when I started, I was having so much fun learning more information that was around the scope of HIM, but it took me into a different level. I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to change my major. So I did. I went from a 2 year master's to a 4 year master's because I was.
Wait. First of all, I am number one blown away by your journey because all of these years I've known you since 2008 and I did not know any of this.
I know.
But I'll tell you something that's really interesting. In my book, I talk about my ACT scores, how they were low and how I could not or I did not believe that I was smart enough to do all the things that I've accomplished. When I was finished up third grade, they told my mom that I would have to repeat the third grade, but then I transferred schools, took another test, and they were like, no, you can go to fourth grade. But here we are 30 some odd years later. How many national tests have I taken? So I am just like shocked because I never knew any of this.
Yeah.
Because you don't wear it on your shoulder.
No, I have overcome self-doubt. Yes, I have.
And so now I understand why your doctoral dissertation was about RHIT exam testing period and all of that. Now it all makes sense. Listen, I talk about my book, Grow With Me, but I really feel like there's a book inside of you that you really need to, why? In the first 10 minutes of this conversation, you have shared so many life experiences that will touch others to realize it's not just them. Everybody thinks that, oh, I'm the one that you passed the exam. Some people didn't pass the RHIA exam. Had to wait a whole year to take it again. But the retaking of the GRE, the retaking of the SAT, those situations could really make you feel like you don't deserve to be in school. And then guess what? On top of that person telling you, are you sure you have a bachelor's degree?
Yeah.
When I was in my first semester of graduate school, my instructor said to me, I don't know how you made it here because you can't write.
Oh,
And luckily, at that point, I was strong enough to understand that her word was not the final say and that I could get some help, inquire with someone else if that's really, where I stand. I went to the
right,
writing center and they told me, no, your writing is fine. You just need to reorganize your thoughts. So instead of her saying, I don't know how you got here, you're a horrible writer, how come she just couldn't say to
right.
me, you just need to reorganize your thoughts? And when I think back on that and I think about me working in education,
Yeah,
I have to stop and pause about what feedback I give to students because you don't know what someone has been through, like yourself, that the feedback that you give them could really cause them to not even want to be on earth anymore.
true, true.
So, okay,
Yes.
tell us more about this journey.
Let me see. So then, after the Masters, I got to wear the Carolina blue and walk into the Dean Dome. I don't know if you're a Carolina fan, but Dean Smith, where Michael Jordan played. Okay, we're ringing some bells. Yeah, I got to graduate on that floor. I had met the creme de la creme of everything I ever wanted. That was it. I was ready to settle in, get married, have babies, do all of that. Plus, of course, I was going to work. I was never going to take any time off from work. Literally, I delivered my son on a Sunday and I was on my front porch on Monday grading medical terminology exams. No kidding. Yes, it was like a drive-through delivery. Yeah, because I was like, there is nothing else I can do here, folks. Let me go. And my child was a preemie, so I left him at the hospital, came home, and then, kind of did that long distance thing for about 7 days. So I start working with this institution. And now I'm like, wait a minute, I'm standing in front of students and I'm teaching. What? What? I swore to myself I would never speak in front of people again without vomiting because it was so anxiety provoking. And I found in myself what made me feel better. And number one, I found that me exercising, finding love for exercising is what got me through that RHIA. No kidding. Because I was so stressed, working full time, trying to study, and I didn't know where to put all of that stress. And so I started walking, and then I started running, and then I started lifting weights, and I started. Now, granted, I'm much older now, and I can't do all that stuff anymore. Not as much anyway, but I found that physical activity for me clears my head rather than going to plant plants. I can't do that. That's not, I need my heart rate to be through the roof for me to clear my head. And I found that out about myself only because I distanced myself. No boyfriends, none of that shenanigans. I had to focus in on me and I had to fall in love with me. And during that time is when I fell in love with me. And I thought, you know what? I will never deal with this anxiety again. I will have it under control because I know exactly who I am. And so then I relocated to Georgia, have a quote unquote boyfriend at that time, started working in mental health again. I kept finding my way back to mental health. I was like, that I think there's something there. There is something there with mental health and me. Maybe I don't know, but that's where I've spent the majority of my industry time is mental health. And so then I applied for this one institution, which is where you and I met, and I started teaching in front of humans. And I was like, this is really weird. So I was traveling all around Atlanta and I was teaching these young adults what sharing with them my journey in the 2-year program, because that's what this institution offered. And I continued to do that. And it was like someone would quit or retire and they kept saying, do you want this? Do you want this? So eventually I left the industry and I went to higher ed, and I stayed with this institution, and I was going all around Atlanta teaching. I was all over all kinds of campuses. And I thought, I think this is my calling, is to teach people about the industry in which I love. And I have, the lineage from my grandmother. And I did that. And then I became the assistant national dean of the College of Health Sciences. It just kind of happened. And then later I'm still a wife, of course, and now we have 2 boys, and I'm working from home, and I'm juggling this and I'm juggling that. And then, ironically, there was an opportunity for this institution to pay 50% of my doctorate. And I talked to my father, my late father, and I said, what do you think? He said, you would be stupid not to jump on that opportunity. And I thought, oh no, no, I'm not doctoral material. Are you kidding me? No, I cannot do this. I was like, Dad, do you realize how long this journey is? And I've got I've got a special ed child that is still not potty trained, and he's 7. I cannot do this. He said, yes, you can. You have a very supportive husband, and you have an excellent older child who does his own thing. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. So I applied through the institution and I was accepted. And I did not tell my mother. I kept it from my mom because I didn't want the backlash, because I knew she would be very, very angry. And so I finished my first 8 weeks and I got A's, I mean, that overachiever's coming back out. I got A's. And my dad ended up telling my mom that I was pursuing a doctorate. And my mother was extremely angry with me. And she said, your children are going to suffer because you can't stop going to school. And I just didn't get it. I just didn't get it. So anyway, start that doctoral. I'm still working full time, trying to raise the kids, working at home. I don't think I fixed my hair for 6 years. I mean, it just felt like that. It was just one day was running into the next. I wasn't sleeping enough, but I was working out. But everything was kind of falling into place. And I got through my 2nd year, which was the coursework. And then I was notified that my job was being eliminated. And at that point, I thought my whole world was over, because I had just purchased a new house and had not made my first payment on it. And I called my husband at work. I said, get ready, put on your life jacket, because we're going under. And he said to me, he said, I need for you to go upstairs. He was a paraprofessional with a master's degree, making nothing. He said, I need for you to go upstairs to our bedroom, and I need for you to get on your knees. And I need for you to pray to God and let him know that you understand that he has not brought us this far to watch us fail. And you know what? I cried all the way up those steps. I mean, I was bawling, and I got on my knees and I did exactly what he said to do. And then it was like I wiped my eyes and I thought, this will not kill me. I will recover from this. I need to find a different identity than this institution. And I called a lot of colleagues and I cried and I was like, I don't know who I am. And when I told my oldest son that I was losing my job in 2 weeks, and he said, you know what, Mommy, it's okay, because maybe now you'll have more time to spend with me and Maddox. And I thought, oh, wow.
You know why?
Okay.
because you were glued to that computer
Yes.
and didn't even know how
Mm-hmm.
much it consumed your life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what does the Bible say? From the mouths of babes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that took my knees out from under me. It did. And when he said that, I thought, okay, God, I hear you. I hear you. I'm not going to beg and plead. Like, they're eliminating my job. That's okay. How am I going to finish this doctoral degree that I have spent already 2 years in? And I'm telling you what, the floodgates opened. I'm not kidding you. I had more gigs coming at me. It was amazing. And I made more money than I could ever shake a stick at. And I was putting it back. And guess what? Every time tuition was due for the doctorate, boom, boom, I had it. I graduated. Now, of course, it took me 6.5 years because my dad passed in the midst of that doctoral degree. But when I walked across the stage, guess what? Zero. I had a zero balance. And that, my friend, is having faith. I truly, truly believe it. I mean, I didn't ask anyone for anything. It just came to me. I did not have to go looking. It was a blessing.
Well, you know what? There's this old saying that you have to close one door before another one opens.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes we are pushed out of that door and
Yes.
pushed out into that uncomfortable space. But look at
Mm-hmm.
how you came out on the other side,
Yeah.
stronger and
Yeah.
happier. And I am a witness that when you close those doors, it strengthens the relationships that should be the most important to you, your
Yes.
husband and your
Yeah.
kids, because we don't realize how much they're suffering in the process of our mess.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Oh
Mm-hmm.
my gosh. Listen, I am trying not to cry.
No.
But this menopausal status has me so emotional. And honestly, I'm okay with crying. Crying is not a sign of weakness.
Mm-mm.
I say that crying is allowing me to shed the weight that is holding me hostage.
That's
And
true.
every time I cry in my car, in my tub, in my office, so many times I've laid on this floor in the office, flat on my face, and just cried. And when I got back up, I felt like this burden has been lifted off of me, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
able to continue to walk in my zone of genius. There are
Mm.
so many people, especially I'm sure people who are listening to this broadcast are going to say, yep, that was me. That was me. That was me. And I'm challenging you today to just take that first step. Do it on your own terms. And when you do that, you will feel a release like never before. It's like, being in a bad relationship where it's time to go, but you're afraid because you don't know what's on the other
Right.
side of the door.
Right.
But on the other side of the door, it's greater and better.
Mm-hmm.
So listen, these sessions are about 30 minutes long. And so I think we've been chatting for about 30 minutes. I am first of all, I'm in shock about your journey, the challenges that you've overcome. I had no clue of this version of you. So I'm excited about hearing it because it lets me know that everyone is going through some type of situation and they may not show it. It may be ripping them apart.
Mm-hmm.
But once you release it, you feel better. And I remember, I'm pretty sure I saw you after your position was eliminated. And I think we were at a conference and your voice then was totally different than your previous voice because your previous
Yeah.
voice had a lot of weight
Ooh,
that was on your shoulder, but it
it
was a
was.
lighter, more confident, more comfortable version of you. And then
Yeah.
I'm sure all those opportunities that were coming towards you helped with that confidence.
It did. It did. It was wonderful. It was nice. But I think the biggest leap of faith that I've taken is what I just took last year, leaving higher education full time and going into the public school system. So I deal with 135 high schoolers every single day, and I talk to them all day. So those big fears that you may have when you're a youngster or younger, or you're just starting your career. I mean, I laugh now at the fact that I speak to over 135 students a day. Right.
You
So,
listen. I'm gonna stay on this with you. I really believe that there's a book inside of you because I am sure there is much more to this growth journey that you've just shared that will help so many people, men, women, boys, girls. So many people are struggling. We saw that during the pandemic where people are just flat out struggling with life, experiencing anxiety, and just really, don't want to be here. I
right,
remember probably about 35 years ago. Let me see. No, I was 15, maybe 30 years ago. I had decided that I no longer wanted to be on this earth, and I tried to take my life. I talk
oh
about
my,
it in the book. I talk about it in the book.
woo,
And when I was sitting in that behavioral health unit for the few hours that I was there, I made up my mind then that I was not going to be a victim. Not going to be a victim to circumstances. I'm not going to be a
right,
victim to people, that I am going to continue to walk in who God called me to be.
right,
And that's what has kept me. People always say, "Why are you so strong?" Oh, I didn't even lay out all the things in the book. Maybe in the next book that I'm
right.
writing. I'm on chapter 2 now with the
Part
new
two.
book. But I want to thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm glad I didn't cry. I was almost there. I was almost there with crying, but I'm happy that you are on the other side of this. There may be some people right now who are in the middle of it. I call it the messy middle. And that
Yes.
messy middle is so uncomfortable that it
Hmm.
it really can allow you to have some sleepless nights, some sad days. But just,
Yes.
I want everybody to know that if you just stay the course and just have faith, you'll come out on the other side of it. And you got to lean on your community, whether it's your family, whether it's
Right.
friends, colleagues. You got to find the folks. Now, make sure they're not in their mess because, two
Right.
messy people in the messy middle can't really help each other. But you need someone that you can talk to that can help support you on this growth journey. And the other side is just so beautiful.
It is. It is. And by the way, I've already written my book, and that was my dissertation. I I'm done.
I said the same thing.
I'm sure you did. Oh, yeah.
Listen,
Okay.
my grandfather, who was 102, read my book and he
Oh,
said, I did not know all these things about you. And
that's
everyone that
beautiful.
has read it said, thank you for being vulnerable. Because,
Yes.
people see you and they have this perception of you that you have it all together and that you've
Yes.
always had it all together. And that's not the case.
Right. Yeah, that is
Well,
not the case.
thank you so much for joining me today and
Well, thank you.
continue to stay safe and continue growing.
You too.